started the November 6th meeting, special meeting of the Tiverton Town Council. Please stand for pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nancy.
Councilor Perry.
Present.
Councilor Shabbat.
Present.
Councilor Ryan. Present. Councilor Hilton. Present. Councilor Demadere. Present. Councilor Edwards.
Present.
Councilor LeBeau.
Yep.
All present.
All right. Discussion and possible votes of proposed charter amendments, town administrator input. Overview.
Yes. In your packets number 2, and then I put on your places a late position on the Tiverton Emergency Management Agency. So most of these you have seen over the last couple weeks, a couple council sessions, other than the Tiverton Emergency Management, which we just worked out this past week. So most of them are, I can walk through each one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If we go through each section and then we stop and have council comments. So we'll do 301 first.
Sure.
And then we'll comment as we go along.
So the logic on 301 is I noticed that the workshop is scheduled for January 15th, and that's also the day that the administrator delivers the budget to the combined group. And I just know, as a matter of going through the budget development process right now, it would have been good to have guidance in September or October to say, this is the vision of the council, the school committee, and the budget committee, and what they're thinking as looking at the budget going forward, as opposed to having a workshop the day you get the budget, which is useful maybe from the point of view of explaining the budget.
Well,
But it's not useful from the point of view of giving the administrator and the department heads any sort of direction on where to go.
All right. Well, my problem with this one is the reason why we have it in January is because that's where the school committee and the town council present their budgets. Guidance isn't given to the town administrator and the department heads from the budget committee. It's given from the town council. And then from that point on, we present these two to the budget committee, give an overview of what our goals are to the budget committee, but they don't direct the town budget. They take both the town and the school budget and then they pick priorities and they go forward. But as far as guidance from the budget committee, that's not the way it works. And that's why I had a problem with this. Also, October 15th is 2 weeks before the election. Every year, every 2 years there's a new council that comes on. So I think the discussion needs to be done with either the new budget committee, the new school committee, and the new town council. So having it in October 15th, it's the old people that are talking to the budget committee, and that's not what's going to happen in January. So, but I think what really bothers me about this is the guidance is given by the town council, not by the budget committee. We tell them what we want, what the administrator recommended, we look at it, we pick our priorities, and then we bring it to the budget committee. They look at the two budgets in the school committee. I think we'll have a problem with this too. The school committee will look at both, they'll look at both, and then they'll pick the priorities of the town. So I don't know if anybody else has any other comments, but I don't think that'll work. And I don't think the budget committee is really the person that gives guidance to the budget. The initial budgets are town council and school committee budgets and guided by them.
Madam President?
Yeah.
I'd also add, Mr. Administrator, that when we went through this the first time last year, that meeting lasted all of like 3 minutes. So
it's really just to present budget.
Yeah, and that tells me that it's probably not a very productive meeting. So maybe there's another way of approaching this is if you want to still have that, if you still think the January 15th meeting to present the budgets is useful just to present it to everybody involved, budget committee, town council, maybe we should rename that to something else. But then the question is is there, I think there's a logic for some time in the fall, early fall, before, I start directing the departments to say, well, I need your budget inputs and here's your guidance. There's something coming from the town council to the administrator saying, here is your budget parameters you should be working under. So that may be in addition to the whole process.
So I also have a problem when you're going from January to October. So for me, it was the same thing. You've got one council who is presenting, just what Denise said, and then another council moving forward. But then I thought, okay, what if we do it November 15th? And I thought, well, that's going to be just as bad, because usually every other year, the election is usually on 5th, 8th, something like that. So then you'd have town councils come in 1 month, 1 week, and they get thrown a whole bunch of stuff, and they're going to get thrown budget stuff on top of that. So, and I think there's also problems with December 15th. So I can understand, I can see where you're coming from, but on the other hand, as a practical matter, I just don't see this working like this. It's one of these things we might just have to deal with. And as we said, it's just a quick meeting. It's just a hello, and then everybody gets down to it. And boy, we get tons of budget meetings in January, February, and we make up for it by just focusing like.
Now, what we did last year in November, what we did last year in November is we told Matt we'd like to make it, I think it was a 1% increase, and that was the goal.
Yes, that's right.
So if you wanted to do something like that and talk to us like, what is an acceptable increase that we should work towards? And that 1% ended up, we increased it.
Sure.
Because we looked at your priorities, Matt's priorities, and the department head's priorities, and we said, well, I think we should put this in and not put this in. And we did take some out and put some in. Now, if you wanted to have a budget committee meeting with us, that I don't think has to be in the charter. That's just what we will decide to do, right, Tony? Like, we could just decide to have a budget meeting anytime.
Yes.
We want to prepare a budget.
Under that, if you're not going to change this, other than leave the initial workshop as it is, has been in the past X number of years, you're right, that can now be done internally. As a practical matter, though, November 15th is kind of late.
Well, now it is. Now we're getting a little late, but
that's something we can work out.
That's something we can work out. As far as I know, the last one was short, but I've been doing this a long time, and some of them aren't as short. Okay, and Joan will verify that, but sometimes they look at it and they've got questions here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So last year was very cut dry, and it was very little abnormal, to tell you the truth. In the past, especially when I was on the school committee, it would last an hour or so.
Oh, okay.
So last year, I'm not quite sure why it went so dry, but it did. It was quick. We passed them out. In the prior years, we've given it to them a week before we have this meeting, so that they've already had some kind of concept, and then we go forward that way. Anything else? Yes, John?
So can we just go ahead and not change this?
Yeah, we can.
Refer back to January, leave, not
Yeah.
change, not make any recommendations on the section?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Section 2, provided by the tax assessor. The two changes are to increase his renewal contract, or the assessor's contract, to 5 years, and then he added more delineation of some of the duties. The reason for the 5 years is that the revaluation is every 3 years, and it's happenstance, and I suppose it could happen in about 5 years, but having a new assessor come in at the time of the reevaluation is difficult. And if we could figure out a way, and I suppose it could be 4 years, or I suppose it could be 2 years, but recognizing that the standard contract here for managers is 3 years for department heads, wanted to explore the possibility of expanding that so that we get her off cycle with the 3-year evaluations.
So every year that he's up for renewal is an evaluation.
Yeah. Just,
It is?
and as a happenstance of his, when he was hired.
Any comments or questions?
Madam President.
Question.
After you, Councilman
It
Ryan.
was a question. For number 4, is that just stating what he already does? Or is that number 4 on that? Or is that is there anything new in that? And who did it? Did Dave do it, or did you put that down?
Dave.
Okay, so that's just, that he's already doing that, there's no added duties there.
To the best of my knowledge. It's nothing new that, I mean,
It's part of his job
It might be
right
new
now.
in the last 3 years. He's recognized that this is something that he has to do, and it's just not codified in the charter, like the charter was done before. It's
Okay.
not new as he's
He's not
asking.
getting extra duties, that's what I mean. So, okay, that was just the question I had.
Now, I tried to look. Does it say 3 years everywhere else in the charter for the others, or is that even addressed in here? Because I don't even know if that's addressed, is it?
I think
That
every
contract.
position is 3 years.
Some of it is.
The administrator, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I was trying to find it, and I apologize, I had a bad week, and I was trying to find
I
it.
think there was all the ones that say not more than 2 years.
That's what I was trying to find.
Madam President.
Yes.
I would just say that I'm a little leery about being so overly specific when it comes to to job descriptions and placing them inside of our governing document. I mean, I would say that we want almost like a less is more kind of thing, and let the contract that the council extends include the job duties and responsibilities for that specific department head, rather than put it into our town governing document. I mean, I think that we're going to hamstring ourselves potentially. And in the case of our tax assessor, he's doing significantly more than this now just by running the website for us. And so, if we take actual duties from some of these department heads and codify them in the charter, it may be more difficult for us to find that person's replacement down the line. And I mean, if you ask me, I think it's just the town of Tiverton shall, appoint a tax assessor, and have the process for it outlined, maybe some broad strokes, things like we have in the charter already. But I think we want to be cautious about getting overly specific in these job descriptions, because ultimately the policy decisions and thereby the contracts they're going to rest with the town council, and we'll be the ones to draft those. That's just my thought.
I have to say that I had the same concern in reading this, not just on this one, but several of them, because, once you put it in the charter, then you have to abide by it until the charter is changed. And, in this case, because Dave is technically, he does a lot of IT work for us, our next tax assessor might be a great tax assessor, but isn't tech savvy, and if they can't do the GIS work, in theory, somebody can file a training plan if we hire them. So I have a concern about that. I also have to say that I have a pretty serious concern about a 5-year contract for anybody. It's a very long time, and as you said, the reevaluation could come up in the 5th year anyway, and not just, there's no guarantee it won't. First, because I think it's very difficult to give one department head a 5-year contract and not offer that, to other people. The other thing about our employment contracts is that just because somebody has a contract doesn't mean they have to stay. There's nothing, the contract's really only binding to us, it's not binding to the employee. We're on the hook for the contract, but any employee here with a contract, any department head can walk in and give their notice and leave at any point. So it doesn't really guarantee us anything, and I think it's 5 years is a very long time, in my opinion, to try and do a contract for.
I just have a question for Tony. The charter, once this charter is signed, sealed, and delivered, is this thing's gospel until the next charter, or is there a way of changing the charter prior to a commission, or however you guys want to call it, to change the charter?
It can be charter amendments,
By the time.
but your mechanism, the mechanism basically is every, I think it's 5 years you have your charter review commission. But there is an opportunity to make amendments to the charter prior to that. In fact, some amendments to the charter were made at the 2016 election that came from the town council.
The town council can, right?
That's correct, yes.
Just the town council?
We're limited to a number though, right?
Right.
Great.
You can bring it forth, but the council has to vote in that.
But isn't it also true that once those charter amendments are passed, you can't change them for 2 years?
No.
There's a limit.
I've got to tell you, I've met twice with representatives from the Charter Commission,
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell you the advice that I've given them, which we're going back and forth on.
Yep.
To me, this all springs from Article 13 of the state constitution.
Okay.
And there are no limitations of that nature in the state constitution. Because Article 13 is in the state constitution, that governs over all other forms of law that come in, state statute, local ordinances, and local charters too.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if there's something, if this charter's written, it's accepted, something doesn't quite fit 3 years down the road, 15 minutes down the road, we can change do a process to fix, like, something that we may approve that sucks. So we can just say, no,
But it
that
has to be
sucks.
voted on.
You have to wait for
But
the
it
next
can't be-
election, and it has to be voted on by the people.
So you don't have to wait the 5 years, we can just say, hey, you know what, this page is absolutely, it's stupid,
No, but you gotta
how
wait.
it slipped by.
You can wait too.
We don't have to wait 2, he says no.
No, you have to wait for the next election.
Yeah. I mean, so,
So it has to be up for,
That's
it
correct,
has to
yes.
go referendum, it can't be just changed by the council.
Yes, Nancy raises a good point. If this were adopted and there was a 5-year contract for one of your employees that's embodied in the charter, if that was amended in 2 years, that contract would still be an effective contract.
Right. So I was just looking for that in the answer, because I just want to make sure the importance of this document when it comes up for voting. I just got to make sure that when we vote, it's not, there's always a way to change something. So
There is.
it's just gotta
Oh,
be-
here it is, amendments to the
Right,
charter.
we just have to make sure that it's available for change, or we really have to really make sure everything's exactly the way you want it. Because nothing's exactly the way you want it.
Correct.
So
I just have one other question. Tony, I talked to you about this. Should we even have, if the contract is 3 years, but in this charter?
It's in the current charter.
It's in the current charter.
But I can tell you that, like for instance, in Warren and Lincoln, where I'm also solicitor, there are no references to contracts for department heads. And they're relatively mild. Barrington and Bristol are more ruthless. What they say is that the department heads, the tax assessor and others, serve at the pleasure of either the town administrator in Bristol or the town manager in Barrington. It's an at the pleasure of.
Well, it's an at-will contract here too, right? That's what Andy used to always tell us.
No, I actually agree with what Trish said. If you have a contract with a department head, they at least the ones that I've taken a look at, they have the ability to leave. The protections really go to the employees, so that if it's a 3-year contract, they do have some protections, and I don't consider them to be at-will employees. I consider them to be contract employees because they have a contract.
Andy always told us they were at-will contracts.
Because you put in that clause that says you can be terminated for no cause. So you're essentially working at will.
Yeah, I get
So,
nervous
yeah,
about
you see
that.
where-
I'm gonna-
Because
I'm
we do
gonna-
have that clause.
I'm
That's
actually,
because of that.
I know Tom was going to, the case, it's the Loudermill case. You're a government employee. Even with a phrase like that, you have rights. And you can't terminate someone without notice
Of course.
and a meaningful opportunity to be heard.
Right.
So I take a more conservative approach on that because of painful experience in the past.
Do you want to know where the history of this 5-year contract comes from? It was me. I had a 5-year contract.
Well, you don't anymore.
It was under, no, when I was contracted. Jim Towers was the administrator, and Janice Gomes and I were both given 5-year contracts.
When you were
They had just given me the tax collection job
Okay.
along with the treasurer job. And they said, we want to have some continuity. So they gave me a 5-year contract, and Janice Gomes at the senior center had a 5-year contract. At the time, we were, I think, the only 2 town employees beyond the elected council. And at the next charter change, they changed that to, that's why you see some in the charter that say no more than 3 years.
Yes.
It was because of that 5-year given to those two people, which happened to be me.
Well, I kind of agree with Trish that I think it should be uniformed. Everyone has a 3-year maximum, not to exceed, instead of changing somebody to 5. I don't know how.
Madam President?
Yes.
The only thing I'm going to say on this, and it's going to, I will echo these comments for the other sections in here where we talk about contracts and specific department heads, but I personally feel that as the constitution of our town, we should not be burying ourselves in specifics and handicapping ourselves and really codifying in our constitution the way that we should be governed from a policy standpoint. To me, if we're going to hand out a contract for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, whatever that is a policy consideration from the town council, and I don't think it has a place in our charter.
So moving in another direction, then, I mean, the changes in here, it seems like there's no desire to move forward, so basically strike these changes, but you're raising the issue of should we go through the charter as is and remove references to the length of the contract, to your point?
How would you
I
get
think
Well,
so.
not to exceed 3 years the way that it's
Well,
set, but Tony is saying that we don't even have to do that.
That's a straight policy consideration.
Mhm.
It's a straight policy consideration to whether or not you want to have that language in your charter, which has been in there for some time.
How are you going to get people, good people, qualified people into the town if you don't give them something?
No, you
Well, it's
will
got the
though,
policy.
but it won't be in the charter.
Would be
So-
your negotiation with the...
Right, but it's not in the charter.
That's the better way to do it.
Yeah,
At least, I don't.
because every single department head has power and responsibilities. So John, what you're saying is those power and responsibilities should be struck.
I think, if you ask me, I think for like the tax assessor section, it should read, the tax assessor shall be appointed by the town administrator with the approval of the town council, period.
And then their duties and responsibilities is in their contract.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we're the ones who are charged with doing the evaluations. It's not, we don't have a system of government where the townspeople are all evaluating the performance of the tax assessor relative to what's in the charter. I mean, we should have some sort of side document that maybe the councils adopt as a policy matter for how we go about hiring people, but it shouldn't be in essentially our constitution.
What does everybody else think about the powers and responsibilities, the duties and responsibilities?
Less is more, and what John said sounds pretty good.
I just came up with that.
You know, I gotta tell you though, some of these say duties and responsibilities, and others says power and responsibilities. I just noticed that.
I tend to agree with John to a certain point. I do think, though, some of this language is helpful. The language, for example, the tax assessor shall meet the minimum qualifications of state certification and tax assessor.
Yeah.
Like, we should leave that in there. I mean, you would hope that no council would ever try and, hire somebody that wasn't, but you never know. I have a question. Tony, in other charters, is it common for them to lay out some duties, basic duties and responsibilities that are pretty broad, or?
It goes just a little beyond what John is saying. Your typical language will be that, you have a tax assessor. There are minimum qualifications by state law that go in there, and also just basically a tracking of the state law for what a tax assessor does, but it's very brief. It's about a paragraph.
Yeah.
And then any other duties assigned. That type of language.
The type of language of the first three, I'm agreeing with John on the specifics, but I just wonder about that first 1, 2, and 3. Are they too, because those are broad strokes, but, and that's what I wonder if is that something that should be in there or not, and I don't feel strong either way. I'm just kind of like questioning, should we put something in there?
Yeah, I mean, I like what the solicitor was just offering, that, it's, here are the minimum standards per the state law that's goes in.
And that's what I'm thinking, that's
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 might be. I don't
I
know.
gotta tell you, I'm looking at the present charter, and it does not have duties and responsibilities, does it? Tax assessor, board, tax assessor, oh, wait,
1, 2, and 3 are there.
No.
1, 2, and 3 are there.
Yeah.
The only upside to leaving 1, 2, and 3 that I can see, since they are sort of broad and they're things that are laid out by the law, is that if you did have an employee as a tax assessor who was somehow not performing or not, in other words, you have this in the charter, maybe that would be helpful in terms if you had an issue, but I don't know. 4, I definitely don't like 4, but I'm okay with 1, 2, and 3.
Tony, can I just go back to you again? So when you said it couldn't get changed, when I said it couldn't get changed, you said that's not true. So it says in the charter, and this amendments of charter, it's the section 1205 on page 26, it says this charter shall not be replaced nor amended for a period of at least 2 years following adoption. And I know when you said, I know that the Charter Review Commission is trying to extend that. So that's where I saw the thing about it can't be changed for 2 years. But is that what you're saying? Huh? Is that what you're saying?
That
goes
tracks
to the
out,
Article
but I have
13?
to tell you that there is no companion language for that in the state constitution.
So is it, should that be removed?
Well, you know, the way that I read that actually is that that must have started off when the charter was initially adopted. And the other way that you take a look at it is, like, to me, the way I read it is there's an argument for this, that you can't have a special election. Charter amendment narrowly passes. The next thing you know, the town council a couple of months later is saying, we're going to have a special election on that. Let's do it again. So
in a way, it sounds like what you're saying is that they don't want it to do it to just keep, you want to be
Correct.
really careful about how you're changing this thing.
yeah, my advice consistently over the years has been, you know, you wait for your next regular election to have any charter amendments. So that's a 2-year swing. Now, for instance, there were amendments to the town charter, 2 very minor ones, at the 2016 election. So, you know, under that provision, but also under the setup that you have, you'd be looking at the 2018 election for change. It's there 2 years.
Okay.
But if the state supersedes it and the state says you can change it, where do you go? Like if somebody's really, this thing gets put in place, and somebody's really upset about something, they say, well, listen, the state supersedes it, where do we go? I just didn't want to understand what you're saying. You're saying the state supersedes the town charter, but the town charter says you're going to have to wait 2 years. Which is it? If somebody goes after the town or whatever, or the charter complains against it, do they have the right? Because Article 13 of our state constitution says so. Because if that's the case, then the whole thing it doesn't make any sense.
This is what Section 8 of Article 13 of the state constitution says. The legislative body of any city or town may propose amendments to a charter. Which amendments shall be submitted for approval in the same manner as provided in this article for the adoption of the charter, except that the same may be submitted at a special election. And provided further that in the case of town amendments concerning a proposition to impose a tax or for the expenditure of money shall be submitted at a special or regular financial town meeting. That doesn't apply. I have to contradict myself. It says you can have it at a special election. That would, Section 8 goes against the section quoted by Christine. Not that I recommend you do that.
But give it to me in the easy term. Never mind all that mumbo jumbo crap.
I knew Randy was going to say that. That's what I
Actually, it's not just Randy.
That's why
I think it's straight.
Here's the difference. It says except that the same may be submitted at a special election. So theoretically, you could have a special election. The town council could propose amendments.
And change the charter. So if something comes bad that the people don't like, we can change it before a 2-year period.
Well, that's to be
Not
voted
that I
on.
recommend.
But voted on, so at least there's something in there that
Yeah,
we're not
because it says
stuck.
right here, the charter may be amended at any time in the manner provided by the Constitution of the state.
Yeah.
It says it right here.
Yeah,
But then it kind of contradicts itself at the end.
correct, yes. That's
That's why he's always going to have a job.
state constitution control.
But it does state that, but then at the end says it can't be replaced in 2 years.
Yeah.
But the whole charter can't be replaced. That's what this looks like. This charter shall not be, oh no, it says
No,
no
or
amended.
amended.
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense.
Then we should get it out of there.
Should we strike that
I
part?
would strike
Or
it.
recommend that part get strike?
I might be trying to-
That's right. By the way, I want to make sure from the topics thing, this is going to be forwarded over to the,
Charter
Charter
review, and
review
I know
committee.
what they're
Yeah.
We
doing.
want to extend it.
They do.
understood, but these recommendations, you might want to take a look at that, or if you want it to come from me in a memorandum, that's okay too.
Well, I think we're going to type this all up because we do have a November 20th meeting. I talked to Rob. And so it would be something that we would present to them, but this is our suggestions. Whether they take it or not, it's fine, but it's just what we've suggested.
Actually, Madam President, I will point out, I believe that this tape is probably going to them.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
No, but I just had a conversation with Rob this weekend, and it'll be November 20th. And actually, he suggested that maybe I meet with him and go over what we've suggested prior to it, so he could get it to them before we do it, and he'd have some explanation and stuff. So I think what we've all just discussed, that we should recommend that last sentence be taken out, because it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense. And like you did say, the state will supersede.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So that's why we're taking it out, because of that. Does everyone agree with that?
Oh, I agree.
Should I take a
Wholeheartedly.
vote on that? Do I have to take a vote on it? Or
We're
is-
just building consensus, right? There's no
Just-
votes on the agenda.
Yes, there is, we can vote.
If you can afford along, I'd actually take a vote on it.
All right, so, anybody want to make a motion to amend section 1205 by taking out the last sentence?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made in second, all those in favor? Okay, now that we've gone way off topic. Okay, so,
This is the first chance you've had a chance to discuss any of this, so.
okay, so as far as the duties and responsibilities, every single section, every single department head has duties and responsibilities. So is it our policy to keep those in or to remove those? I know what John's thinking, go ahead.
Well, I would just clarify, I think we should keep them in to the extent that they coincide with what the state laws and regulations are. So, for example, in terms of the assessor, they have to meet those specific state criteria, and then their duties will track specifically what the state outlines. But I think everything else that's superfluous should be removed from the charter,
Tony.
including contracts.
I don't know if you like this suggestion, but Tony, could you go over the duties and responsibilities of each one and tell us what we shouldn't put in there? Advise to us what is very basic?
Yes.
And then I'll put it on the agenda on Monday, our town council meeting, and you can present, well, you've got a week.
Yes.
Tuesday,
And I'm going to bug you
Yes.
a moment of that, but I mean, if you read the duties and responsibilities, it's short,
Yeah.
it's short. So there are some, I was just looking at one myself, on a department head that probably doesn't need to be there. All right, is that all right with everyone?
Yeah, I would just, the only thing I would suggest that it might be superfluous that we want to keep is the DPW director as a fee.
Well, I think we're going to get to that.
Because I know that's in here, I'm just saying if we're,
Yeah, all right, well,
So,
okay.
so
So as far as the tax
section
assessment.
604, just, we're not, no action at this point.
go back, I'm going to go back page. Yes.
I mean, we're not making any of these additions. You may make others.
Yeah.
And do you agree with that, Paul, that it go, okay. All right.
Do you want to continue?
Yes, please.
So, section 806 is the director of the senior citizen is really an organizational thing. It has currently the director's senior citizen center as an individual under town officers, as opposed to under, which you'll see it a couple sections later, under a department as a department that has the director who has duties. So I'm suggesting that we delete section 806 and it will be replaced by a new section 910, under whatever framework we can use to discuss the 910.
So 806.
So if you go,
Yeah, I got it.
so 806 just is a discussion.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
And my sense is, Tony, if you can weigh in, is that town officers are the clerk, town clerk. I don't think they're necessarily supposed to be the senior citizen director.
Elected positions is it?
Well, that's what it looks like.
And so my guess was that was an amendment that was put in sometime, and for whatever reason, they stuck it there.
So what you're suggesting is that we put it as a department head.
And I have something delineated later on in the document.
Everyone in agreement with that?
I'm in agreement.
Yes, although I would
I'd
take
like
out
to see-
the minimum of 8 years' experience and the qualifications that I would
Oh, you
take
jump
out.
into the new section?
Well,
Yeah.
Don't
All I'm proposing is that we
I'm trying to be
move it.
organized.
Yeah, move it to 900s.
Okay.
Okay.
Department of Public Works.
Director of Public Works, I see Bill's here, so we can talk in detail. But what Bill did for that was, based on the addition of the existing description, was add in the fact that he is, hired as in his contract as a town engineer as well, and comes with certain qualifications. I think that was decided when you did hire him last year, that you wanted that. So that's the suggestion that we codify that.
Any comments?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut off Councilor Ryan.
It's just right in
Sure? Okay.
there. I could go after you.
All right, the only comment I would make is in the middle on page 3, it says, Department of Public Works shall be responsible for the functions, blah, 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 blah. If we were going to continue to keep this, which it sounds like we may not, if we go to the minimum standards, but I would just strike the part where it says future closure of the landfill and replace it with the landfill. Because at some point in time, the landfill will be closed and we'll still be doing maintenance on it. So I think that would still fall under operation of the landfill. So, and then the other question I had was regarding public buildings and properties. I know the school department maintains them, but if we construct them, would he be involved in some of that? And again, we've got potential language changes.
What are you looking
All
at?
that sort of stuff.
No, I don't have a more particular language of that.
So,
Well, if I may, Bill and I have actually had a conversation, and it's something that, I'd like to discuss with the superintendent is, why doesn't Bill just take over the maintenance? Take the budget for it and he doesn't have a budget for it. Those employees are not his employees.
What employees? His maintenance department? Is that?
The superintendent?
Yeah, he has a maintenance department.
The superintendent has a maintenance department. But they don't work for Bill.
Oh, no, that is true, and we wouldn't want to go there, would we?
I don't know.
Well, first of all, they are our buildings, but they own it while they're using it. So I think it would be way too much work for Bill to have to, because there's a lot of maintenance, and there's a lot of buildings, and they have a maintenance department head.
Do
And
that.
they- But they have a head one, right?
Well, just like I have a head one and a lower one, and they have the same
They,
thing.
okay, yes, I'm just thinking the individual I'm thinking of, and then they have workers, and they have their own. I think it would be way too much to put on our DPW director. And not only that, he's not there all the time. Like, he doesn't work for the superintendent, so it'd be kind of weird, because the superintendent gives him responsibilities, and he knows what the building needs, and Bill's not there every day, and I don't know, I don't think we should cross that. That's
Certainly not in the charter.
because I've been on both sides, I could see that would become a real nightmare.
Madam President, just this year, probably 20, 30, 40,000 could have been saved if Bill's department and the head of the school department got together on just paving, because they had to call 2 separate paving contractors.
Well, they could definitely do that.
They need to
There's-
work together a little
They
bit. to
could,
have it.
and maybe Paul should suggest that, or Bill talk to the head of maintenance, they could definitely work, do that.
This is our law book coming in, and we should make it mandatory, because it's going to save a ton of money. These people are spending, the school department's spending our money, our tax money, like it's their tax money. It's the town's tax money. It's the people of Tiverton. So we can save $40,000 or $50,000 by paving all the roads at the same time, instead of the school doing a little bit, and then Bill having to go out and say, well, why didn't we do this together? And we could have got $3 off per square foot because we did so much in one day. So why let the school department spend the taxpayers' money separately when it's a road that's being done? So we're going to have a rule like that, make them so they both have to sit down and say, needs to be done, we're gonna do it together, and we're gonna save 50 grand for the town.
I don't know how we put that in there.
Okay.
I think we're talking about stripping it all out. So that would be a policy consideration.
This is one of the things you have to take consider. Not only the Charter Review Commission, but you all too, because it comes here. This is your basic governing document. So the question is what do you want to put in here, and what provision should properly stay as a matter of an ordinance, which is the same thing, can be more specific, can be more detailed. This is basically the blueprint for how your government is going to be structured, as opposed to how specific things are going to be done in terms of the operation of government. I think that's one of the things you got to take a look at.
I agree with that, but when it comes to just two men talking, saying, we're going to schedule this together to save the town 50 grand, and one of them has a pissing match and doesn't want to do it, well, that shouldn't happen. Now it's on the taxpayer, and then we scrape by for every nickel in this town, and just from two guys saying, okay, we're going to schedule it for this day, now we just save 50 grand, and it can't happen because the school department's got, oh, that's our money, we will do what we want, you screw town. And we get all the money, and they can't, it's got to stop.
Many cities and towns mandate that through ordinances.
And well, we need to do something.
The reason they do it through ordinances is sometimes what happens is as technologies change, it's easier to get it done on that basis, as well as to put in like the ASHTO requirements and things of that nature.
Well, I just like to see.
So did that really happen?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I have had the conversation with the superintendent, and we think we've got a protocol in place that won't happen again. However, that is based on 4 people sitting at a table, his person as well, Bill and the superintendent, and making a decision. However, to Tony's point, I believe there are cost savings that could be looked at and explored to merging and managing all the same sort of maintenance in a town of this size through one organization as opposed to 2 parallel organizations. But that's not a charter question, that's just a sidebar.
Well, I thought we're going to put a rule in the charter, which is put a rule where if you can save money, you should save the money.
But
Right
Randy-
in the last line somewhere.
But Randy, I think what Tony was suggesting, that it might be better to do it in an ordinance instead of the charter.
Absolutely. It just needs to be done.
Yeah.
I don't care how it gets done. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It just needs to be done. We can't be just throwing money away. That doesn't make any sense.
I have another question with this though. This is a school committee policy that they have a maintenance department. So they would have to be, we can't roll over them and just say, you no longer have a maintenance department, we're gonna have our DPW director be your boss. That's a school department has a maintenance department. Am I right? We can't just tell the school committee, you no longer have a maintenance department.
I'm not talking about the maintenance department, but what I'm hearing Randy talking about is how your roads are maintained and repaved and things of that nature.
Okay.
And typically that's done by ordinance. And it'd be a comprehensive ordinance that would also include work by utilities to make sure that NatGrid and the rest of them repair your roads in a manner that is acceptable, and also not one of these things where the town repays the road and the next thing you know they're putting down a gas line or something like that.
Right.
Then it has to be redone. Many cities and towns have those provisions, and I recommend that you do that.
But is this something that we're going to do, or we're just going to sit here, talk about it, go out the door, and it's never going to get done
No,
again?
we can
Madam
put it.
Madam President, if I may, Section 1102, under the school committee, Article 1102, buildings and grounds, at the request of the school committee and subject to the agreement of the town council, in consultation with the administrator and the director of public works, the director of public works may be assigned to assume the responsibility for maintenance of various school property, provided the costs of such maintenance are charged against the appropriate. So the charter gives the creates a situation where we could do this. It's just a question, is the business case there? And I don't have an answer to that.
Go ahead.
So, of all of the ones, this one, I have a lot of concerns about this particular section.
Well,
The DPW language. I think our objective would always be to have an engineer in that job, but putting happen. Bill leaves us someday and we hire, I mean, there are people out there who have been DPW directors who might have 25 years experience from someplace else. They're not an engineer, but, you know, they ran DPW someplace else for 25 years. They retired and they're looking for, you know, to work for another 10 years. I really don't want to put that kind of restriction in the charter. But the big thing that's throwing me is this whole idea of a town engineer, because I'm not really sure that we ever decided what a town engineer is and what a town engineer does, and we're creating this this sort of function. Now, Bill's an engineer, which is awesome, and our previous DPW director was an engineer, and certainly having an engineer in that role is enormously helpful, especially when it comes to stormwater management and the engineering that is required, that is involved in especially road maintenance and stormwater regulations and all that other kind of stuff. But, you know, there are plenty of times where the town has had to go out and has hired engineers for other projects simply because they're either too big a job to ask the DPW director to take on, or they require a different kind of engineering expertise. We hire Bob Hoffman when we need environmental engineering. We've hired Bill Smith plenty of times when we've needed, you know, subdivisions done, or you know, or things like that. And so I'm not sure I'm even comfortable with having in here the idea that the DPW director is automatically the town engineer, because I don't necessarily think that that's true. And I think it's asking an enormous amount of one person who's, you know, got a lot on their plate to start with. And even things like, you know, to act in capacity as the town engineer for technical review, working with other departments, committees, boards, and things like that. Well, you know, there are certainly some instances where the DPW director's input is critical, especially if it's, you know, planning and they're putting in a road that the town's going to own or something like that. But the planning board has its own consulting engineer that we pay for, who, you know, does subdivision reviews and, you know, individual lot reviews and things like that. This seems like we're asking one person to be Superman, and I mean, this looks like a recipe for burned out in no time to me, and I think that these things shouldn't necessarily be in the charter. I think we should keep it, again, vanilla, and our preference would always be to have an engineer, but we can't do, and this reads to me like a job that one person can't do without burning themselves out.
Madam President, I was just going to say that, given that we sort of already discussed in the town tax assessor, description of having our solicitor come back with recommendations on how to strip a lot of this stuff out and do the bare minimum. Since the rest of this document sort of deals with personnel, would it just make sense to sit on this until the next council meeting when we're going to get those recommendations back from the solicitor, rather than sort of belabor some of the minutiae that's probably going to get cut out anyways?
Tony, do you feel the same way? Do you feel that we should put requirements like that in the charter? That he has to be an engineer? That he's going to be the town engineer? Because I don't even know what that means, a town engineer.
Typically, the language is, PE is preferred, but not a requirement.
He doesn't say, and Bill wasn't hired as the town engineer, he was just, has his PE degree.
I know, but the new thing.
Right, so.
I beg your pardon, I meant the DPW director.
Yeah, that's what we mean.
So if it's in the contract that we want it, then, you know, or it's preferred if we have it, it's a good idea, but he wasn't hired as the town engineer, Bill wasn't. So we just happened to, lucky enough to have it, and we're lucky enough that he can close the dump. So once we close the dump, we don't even need him anymore.
Bill, go ahead.
No, you got 5 years, buddy.
Second. So all I did was I took the job description and contract that you sent out to hire me, and I added that language
into the charter.
to the charter.
Right, and the discussion here is.
Right, because
Totally
the
different.
things, just so that when you want,
Right.
when I was interviewing and everything else, you were looking for the person, the qualified person, to not only be the DPW director, but also to take on the engineering role to cut your bills down, what you were paying for your consultants and doing all of this stuff. So,
You know what Tricia's saying now.
what she said that, they have Steer to do things and this, yeah. And Steer is still working for the planning board, and I'm still doing some reviews for that as well. But Steer is no longer doing things like for the building side of things. So you come in with an individual lot, and that stuff's coming to me to review, not going to Steer any longer. And when you come in to do, it's just a lot of the things that a typical town engineer would do is what's coming into me now to review. I'm not handling the bigger projects. I'm letting Steer deal with that, but that's more about how it's worked out between us and how it's working. Just saying that like all the erosion inspections that you wanted done on the individual lots that weren't getting done for our permits, well, now I'm doing them. Things like that. So it's just a role. And again, many communities in the state have their DPW directors who they hire an engineer and serve as that town engineer role as well. But there are still a few communities in the state that only hire a DPW director who is not an engineer. They have a separate individual they hire as an engineer, town engineer.
And just bear in mind that those larger projects we're talking about, the town isn't paying Steer, the builder is paying Steer.
Well,
I actually, when I read this, I was like, oh my God, you're doubling your job. Because that's what it looks like to me. It was like, oh my God, what are they doing to this guy? But now I'm listening to you, and it doesn't sound that way. It sounds like you're okay.
Well, no, it is. It's gonna. But I'll tell you when it's tough is when you have the 4 largest projects going on in Tiverton happening at the same time right now.
Right.
That's when it's extremely, it's gonna.
But that's going to go on for a while.
When we're talking about burnout, that's when I'm going to get burnt out. So,
Well,
so that if
so
something
that's
else
why-
comes in for a big
yeah.
project, it's going to the consultants. I just can't get to it.
Well, okay, but that's
Right.
fine,
Yeah.
because that's what it looked like to me. It was like, oh, this is way too much. The same thing, we need Superman here.
Yes, if you don't have big, huge projects all going on at the same time in town,
Yeah.
that's manageable. It's just
Yeah.
when you have multiple
Yeah.
projects at large scale, that's when it's tough.
Just, if I may, just quickly, and just to Bill's point,
Yeah.
it was in the RFP
Mhm.
and the proposal. You had the ability to make that decision. If it goes in the charter,
You don't have.
then
the
you're not going to
ability.
have the ability to say at some point, this isn't what we want to do,
Right.
because it's enshrined.
Because
That's
then we
one of
have
the
to
things
do
you
a
got-
charter amendment.
Yeah.
There's sometimes what happens is there's a tendency to say, this is what's going on in real time now, let's put it in the charter. And sometimes what can happen is, as time marches on, that reduces the flexibility of the elected officials at the time to deal with circumstances as they arise. That's one of the reasons why your governing document should not be over-specific, to your point.
So,
Can we,
So we go easy on it.
yeah,
we'll pass this whole thing then?
I would propose that other than maybe the Tiverton Emergency Management, which is language change to bring it in conformance with state law. As John said, everything else here is potentially going to be reviewed and streamed down from what we've drafted.
before we go off of this though, can we just have a very short general discussion about the land use and development department before Tony?
Yeah, because that's brand new. Right, that's a brand new section.
You guys all know how I feel about that one.
All right, so let's,
So,
we do. Okay, go ahead.
I get it. The language here is to combine our 2 existing departments, the planning department and the building / or the code enforcement department, into one department, which regardless of what we may call it or how we describe the duties or what ultimately it's called or arranged, I do think that we need to combine those because we don't have the administrative staff to support 2 departments. And we need, as Councilor LeBeau has said, we need to get a planner, and that planner should be someone who has the experience to lead that department. The only other sort of new thing here is creating this thing we're calling the land use administrator, who has the zoning experience to be the zoning officer, which is a duty that is now described and as part of the building officer's duties, and also creating it such that that person can also be the administrative officer. There's nothing, I mean, there should, and I think I put the language in here, although we will probably streamline it. There's nothing in here at some future date when we have a planner, that the planner could not be the administrative officer as well.
Trish?
So, I think this is, for the charter, too big an overreach. We're trying an experiment to see if we can hire somebody who can be the administrative officer and the zoning officer at one time. We're not even sure, we're trying it, we're advertising now to see if that works. I feel strongly that this group should be co-located. Whether or not they all end up in one department is a whole nother question. They should definitely be in the same office space so that, it's one place to go if you're coming in to do things. And, as far as the planner goes, I think this is, a one step at a time thing. If we can't hire this, we can't find a land use administrator, we're going to have to come up with something else. If we do, and that works, and we get a good person and they do a great job, the planning board may come back to us at a certain point and say, because frankly, Tiverton's experience with planners is, we're 1 for 3 right now. We had one good planner, we've had 2 planners that, for whatever reason, it was not a good fit. The planning board could come back and say, we have a great land use administrator who does everything we need them to do. We don't want a full-time planner. We want to be able to hire a consultant for certain big projects. I mean, we don't really know we're just kind of taking baby steps in this direction. So putting all of this in the charter like this is, to me, I think, getting a little ahead of ourselves. I think we probably have to do something about identifying, that we need a planning function in the charter. Which we don't. We have to have something that identifies that broadly and generally, and we have to have something that says we have a building official and, that we have a zoning official, but I wouldn't have anything nearly this big, because who knows if the experiment's going to work or not.
So what you're saying, if this doesn't work, we're stuck with this for
the
next 2 years.
And again, I'm not even sure if we get lucky and we get a great person in, we may be saying in 9 months, you know what, we don't want to hire a planner, we want to be able to use the money for really good consultants for big, planning projects, but we've got a great person. I mean, the other thing to remember is that in the, planning office, in the building official's office, there was a period of time after the crash in 2008 where there was not much going on. So it's one thing to get staffed up because we're in a go-go mode right now, but we also don't want to end up with, if things cool off or slow down in a little while, a whole bunch of people that don't have enough to do because, real estate's cyclical and sometimes things get really slow. So, I don't know.
So how do,
Tony, can you turn that into words we can use?
well, we don't have a planner in
The main
here.
gap,
do
right, the main gap is.
we don't have a planner in here at all in the charter.
No. Can we just say that we have to have a planning function without saying that specifically what it is?
Do we have to even say that?
I think it should be a planner if we're going to have it in there, because
Well,
once you get it, we don't have it anymore, we're never going to get it back again.
But it's not in there now.
Well, that's scary.
It's not, it's
We
not
should
in
put it in there.
Right, that's what you suggested.
Yeah.
But-
but not describe every,
Oh, not as a planner, but as a planning function.
Well,
Planning
if we
office.
put a planner in here, we have to have a planner, which is,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Question, is that necessarily true? Can you have a position that's listed in the charter that you choose from budgetary reasons or another reason that you contracted out? and you have consultants do the job. Is that possible?
Or do you put that in the charter? A planner or consultant as the needs of the town?
That's a little dicey.
Okay.
But, under section 407 of the existing charter, subsection 6, you have the ability to create, change, and abolish town offices, departments, and committees not established by this charter or by the Constitution and laws of the state. Any office, department, or committee so established shall conform to the provisions of the charter.
Don't put it in there.
If there's an issue, you can say that you will have a planning function that conforms to statewide. Talk to Paul about this. And what you have here proposed in the charter, in my opinion, does conform with the state enabling acts. The question is whether or not you want to have it in the charter now or establish it by council ordinance or resolution, so long as you have companion language in the charter that would allow you to do that. That would give you the flexibility, Paul, I think you're looking for.
So what do you suggest? So what language? Not the language.
Craft us some words, Tony.
As vanilla as possible.
That would be good.
Hey, you know what? We're going to come up with it. I'm sending emails to Peter even as we speak.
You know what I was just thinking? Nancy hasn't said this yet, but we're not going to be able to have the charter. We're not going to be able to have. What didn't we advertise? Well, I'm sorry, it's just
Oh, comp plan.
the comp plan meetings.
That's right, wrong side,
No,
yes.
once again, this is the kind of time this did not.
Tom, you're
Yeah,
killing us.
correct.
I know, Tom,
So the comp
Fine,
plan
it's-
meeting was for next Wednesday.
Wednesday and Saturday.
Right, so what I'm thinking of, because this gets kind of complicated, maybe we should just take that 15th and make it another charter review. And then we still have a few more days before we have to go talk to Rob, not
Is
Rob
that a
alone,
Tuesday?
the charter commission. So no, it's a Wednesday. We had it planned on a Wednesday anyway, so I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I love that night free.
Talk to me about this date again.
What is it?
It's
November
on the calendar
15th.
as the comprehensive plan hearing.
Right.
At 7 or 6?
7 o'clock, which is at 6, I can't
Now
make
we're
it 7.
calling this meeting.
Yeah, just because I have a feeling if we put this on a regular town council agenda, we're gonna be there, it's gonna take up a lot of the meeting.
We can't put it
And
in.
then-
talk forever.
And then it gives Tony a little more time to prepare, because he has till Wednesday,
So,
the 15th.
A week in advance.
Yeah, we can attack.
Ready to do it this Wednesday.
Madam
Well, I would tell you,
Go ahead.
Monday's a holiday anyway.
Right, and we have a town
Meeting
council meeting on the
Tuesday,
14th.
the 14th.
And then we'll meet on the
So he
5th.
still has to have it by Friday, because I got to post.
Well, I'm just saying,
Monday's
for
a holiday.
time's sake, I don't know what the agenda's gonna look like yet. I have a feeling it's gonna be very long because of things that are coming to me. So, I think we should just have another separate meeting, again, on the 15th.
I thought Friday was the holiday.
No,
That's
Not
what,
in the state of Rhode Island, it's
It
Monday.
is the
It's
it's
my
the
favorite.
holiday, but it's being celebrated Monday.
just in Rhode Island?
I think so.
me too. I'll be working too, because I work in Mass and it's not even a holiday. So the fifth, no, not the 18th anymore, because it's the kind of times. It's not Tom's fault.
So wait a second, what day?
No, it's Tom's advertising.
We're meeting?
For this,
For
for
this.
the charter.
Wednesday, the 15th.
Okay, I'll say it one more time.
We'll have that at the end.
We were supposed to have a meeting,
On the
okay, that's what I'm
15th
trying to
and
explain to you. It did not get advertised properly, so we have to cancel it. So seeing that we were gonna be out that night, and I know that you're all free, why don't we make that night another charter review? And then Tony, and we can all, and it won't take up half the town council meeting. We won't be up till
So-
1 o'clock in the morning.
And we're also canceling the meeting on the
18th will be
18th.
canceled.
Okay.
Not that you have to work around my schedule, but Madam Clerk happened to mention to me a couple of days ago about this kind of Times advertisement, and that we weren't going to be able to have this meeting.
So you made
So
plans?
I did.
That was
Because I thought it was
quick.
being canceled, because I had heard about this. So I mean, if everybody else is available, you should have it, but I did hear that we weren't having that meeting, so I scheduled something else. I might be able to change it, I'm not
Okay.
sure, but I might not be able to now.
Well, okay.
It's not, we'll email it and put your comments forward.
Yeah, you just give me a copy. All right, I'm sorry, let's go on, but I was just thinking, because Tony's like writing all this down, that'll be the 15th, not for the 14th. All right. All right, so what should we do? So you're gonna talk about that, Tony, you're gonna write some kind of language concerning the planner and the whole
Yes.
planning department. Okay. All right.
The only other one on this one really is, it's an organization change, not in a way we could talk about, is the email that I added at the very last minute. Section 904 is the Tiverton Emergency Management Agency. Chief Floyd has updated that language to be more reflective of state law. Solicitors looked at this, and we've deleted basically everything that was in there before, and the new language is there.
Cool.
And Tony's reviewed this, you said?
This is what we're doing now, though, the new language, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
This is honestly the most succinct language we've seen thus far as it pertains to any of these
Well,
departments.
it took the state law.
That's more
All
or
right,
less.
and how about, so we're not going to talk about the senior center?
I think that we let us, because it does talk about the duties and responsibilities, so we let us just, you've agreed that it should be under the departments, that's the major change.
So maybe I should have a vote just on this emergency management
Yep.
one, if you're clean on this, so we can.
Okay, so I'd
We'll
like to
make that.
entertain a motion to approve the new Tiverton emergency management.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made, second. All those in favor? Unanimous. All right, number 3. Town administrator,
I
oh,
have a question.
go ahead.
I thought maybe I'm confused. I thought this was also an opportunity if we had
Yes.
ideas for to like toss them out there. No?
Yeah, it's ours to reduce.
Well, we didn't put it on, it's not on the agenda.
Oh, this is funny,
Where is it?
discussion of possible votes on proposed charter amendment.
Okay, then
And
the
then
town
the
administrator,
administrator
yeah,
has
okay.
had his.
Okay, go ahead then. Do you have a suggestion?
I have 4 things. First is, and I know there's a whole lot of discussion about the FTR, but having lived through the remand, I think that the remand option needs to go. I think if we're going to have elector petitions, they have to be submitted with docket line items. And I feel really strongly about that. The idea that you're going to create a budget with just a couple of line items and kick it back to the council and the school committee is, I mean, if they, so if the voters want to do that, they know what line items are being cut. There's also a section in there that basically prohibits any town employee from being a volunteer. Now, I understand the whole part about you can't be an elected official and volunteer for something. That makes sense. But it seems really silly to me that someone who's a school teacher can't volunteer to be on the Recreation Commission or the Historical Cemeteries Commission, or that if you're a firefighter, you can't. I mean, so I realize there are some limits as far as potentially someone not serving on a board or commission that might be advisory to what their job is, but there's a whole pool of volunteers we're missing, and I don't understand why that language is in there.
And they're probably more engaged than
Then,
your ordinary
right.
citizenry because they're active in the town already.
Yeah,
I don't know why that language is in there. I know why elected officials aren't in there.
I
but-
understand the elected officials.
Costume,
What?
in the DPW that was working on the recreation, remember, that's how this, and somebody didn't like the idea that they were working on,
Why though?
and they said you can't work on
I mean, maybe there has to
it.
be
On
some
recreation,
language.
doing a great job.
Maybe there has to be some language so that you can't volunteer on a board or committee that, directly impacts your job, or you have to, or whatever, but I just think we should change that. The EDC needs a new.
Where is that, Tricia? I don't,
Oh,
I see it, but no.
I didn't write the section down.
Composition, probably.
No, it's
No.
weird. It's like it's in the back section. It's like this really strange.
Miscellaneous someplace?
Yeah, you can tell that it was something that somebody voted through on referendum because it was,
I'm looking.
If it's in the back.
Is it dual office holding?
no, it's not. It's, maybe it's somewhere stuck. It's like randomly stuck in there with the,
I was just wondering.
it's there. It says that employees
You
can't.
can't be an employee and work,
Yes.
can't be on a board or commission.
Is there a problem, Tony, for like a school teacher to be on the recreation committee or a DPW employee to work on, I wouldn't say recreation, there shouldn't be a conflict.
It could be.
There are typical provisions in other charters, having employees not doing other,
Volunteer work?
doing, volunteer work on committees, but that's not universal. But it's not an uncommon provision either.
Or is it to try to stop people from forcing them to volunteer, forcing in quotes?
No, it's basically, it's the exact opposite, so you don't have a closed shop.
Okay.
In other words, it's a small
Section
circle of people
10,
that are
11.
running the town.
That's already happening.
Yeah,
Oh, general qualifications, that's what
there it
it's
is.
under?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow, I've never found that.
must be electors of the town and, shall,
Well, I mean, I can see maybe there are a few things like the planning board or the zoning board that have certain quasi judicial authority, or maybe the personnel board or something, but I don't, I just think we should find a way to let people volunteer if they want to on,
What would happen, Trish, if the school department, you get teachers, say a gym teacher, for instance, says, oh, I'm going to volunteer on the recreation commission, and their kids play on the soccer field, and we get the nicest soccer field you ever seen, but the baseball field sucks. That's what they're trying to probably stop. So let the teachers let those people volunteer on the pet or the beach commission. The teachers, got to keep them away from their direct line, because if I was a gym teacher and I'm teaching soccer, my soccer field would be the best if they let me go volunteer.
I totally agree. So maybe there's certain, maybe there's, if whatever your job is, your paid job, somehow would impact or give you an advantage, then you can't do it. But, I mean, I'm pretty sure you can be on the Historical Cemeteries Commission and not be doing that anything.
Well, wouldn't they subscribe to the ethics rules anyways?
Yeah,
So-
I mean,
Yeah, but a soccer coach who's on the recreation committee, is it going to be against any ethics violation?
Right.
Because they're not getting the money.
Yeah.
It's all money.
Financial.
It's all financial. So Tony, is there a way we could put in there, elected officials, no, we'll have to put employees of the town may be on boards or commissions if it does not influence their job, or, I don't know, well, not influence, but
why not just end it after elected officials and allow it?
Period.
Yeah.
My favorite thing. We'll move on here.
shall not be elected officials, period.
Except as 1213, that's only the one where the elected
Right,
officials.
but should we put something about employees of the town should be on boards or commissions that directly influence their job?
There are provisions like that in other town charters.
So would that be the way you'd word it, or you'd word it a little differently?
It is, no, what it allows is some situations,
That would
like
not
a range
directly
situation.
influence their job.
You can have language in there for that, but, somebody that works in a school department wants to go on the land trust or something, then that's the issue.
So we could put,
You can-
shall not be elected officials, period. Employees of the town may participate.
Yeah, I'm gonna add it to the list.
Okay, right, Peter, he's at home like saying, oh my God. Why didn't I go to this meeting?
Peter's writing up his resignation.
Yeah.
But it would be so it would be a period after that, and then employees of the town may participate in committees, blah, 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 blah.
and then the last one I had.
Before we get off that particular item, is there a reason why they have to be electors of the town?
And not just residents?
Why they have to be registered voters?
Oh.
I raised that with the Charter Review Commission
And what they-
already and said that, you know, it is an issue. We do lose some. I
Yeah,
tell you,
yeah.
we don't know of it, but Leon handles it at her and there are a few that just
Are registered
choose not to be an elected. I did have this full discussion on that with the Charter Review Commission.
So what's the thinking?
Well, they didn't deliberate on any of those things and have to put the thing in writing, so if you want it in or out of this, you should.
So we just delete the whole thing that says no members of boards of commission shall, as listed as charter shall.
I think if you take that out,
Oh,
you're gonna have
yeah, I think we should have a
problems.
discussion about that. I actually, at first glance, it sounds kind of benign, but I can think of any number of instances where people who were not electors wanted to be on boards or commissions, and it was purely because they had some sort of vested financial
Well, that would be the
interest.
same thing with the registered voter, though.
Well, except that if you're a registered voter, for sure, you're a, you know, I mean, this is your home, this is your community.
Because you know where it
so-
stemmed further from, then they started to say, and someone in the audience here, which I think also put, requesting for a charter change, to say that if you just own property, so you don't even have to be here, but I own property.
Oh, well, then that
and
opens
it's
up a huge
starting
right of
to
way.
stretch, so you should think hard on that one.
Yeah. I like to qualify. There should be some sort of qualified enforcement, would be not just residents, but prove that they're residents. The way you
Well,
do
they-
this by being a partner.
Ask John Cox.
Well, there you go.
I wasn't gonna say.
You know,
No, but I could be a resident and choose not to vote, and now you're forcing me to be a voting resident of the
If you
town.
want to be on a commission.
But that is really the extreme.
But you can still register to vote and just not go vote. I mean,
A couple, when it's recognized, they do register right then, so that
Yeah.
because they're that dedicated to wanting to be on that committee. But, I don't know that you're not forcing some, I don't know that you should force me to be a registered voter. I think I should want to be anyway, but that was.
What if you allowed somebody, what if you allowed somebody the alternative, if they didn't really want to register to vote, but they filed their income taxes from Tiverton? In other words, if you want people who.
I just don't know how to
And
track that.
then you want people who are vested in the community. I mean, they might want to be on a board or commission for a reason, but if they live here and this is their home, they're invested in this place as a community versus somebody who just happens to own a piece of property. They're really not invested in it as a community, but they have an agenda of something that they want to do for their own.
But then I can see someone saying, I've rented here for 20 years, for 30 years, and this
But
is
you're still an
discrimination.
elector.
You can
No,
still
but
register to
would you
vote if
say-
you're a resident.
Huh?
You can.
Yeah, well,
You
it's-
can
No,
select.
I would
You
thought
don't
you
have
were
to
talking
rent.
if you're not, if you own property for
No,
for your.
I mean, if you're
If
an
you live
elector,
here.
if you're an elector, whether you own property or you rent property here, this is your home and this is your community, this is.
Yeah, but what Christine is saying, that if you rent and you don't want to be a registered voter, and you don't own property here, right, Christine?
Yeah, but you know what, this
You're
is
just
getting
an
into the
intermediate.
minutia.
You're not a registered voter. You can't even vote at the FTI. You can do, never mind if you don't want to choose,
Right.
I don't want to
Never
vote
mind,
for
yeah.
president this year.
Mm.
But that's saying you don't even want to vote for your FTI.
And like John said, you don't have to vote, you just have to register.
Joan, since you brought it up, do you want?
I don't think you should restrict it. Choice, whether you want to be a voter or not. You know, to me, you don't have to be.
I'm not sure how we would make sure.
I think that Councilor Shabbat and I disagree on that, Bill.
I think you should
I think it's
register
just
to
civic
vote, but
duty.
you don't have to vote. But you should be a registered
Especially if you're
voter.
voting for me.
Well, needless,
Okay.
that goes without saying.
All right, well, let's mull that over in our minds. and we'll bring it up next time.
Trish, you said you had 4, but I only
I
got
have
2.
a fourth one.
Oh.
And that's
She brought
about,
up the third.
and that's about the personnel board.
No, you didn't bring up EDC.
Oh, the EDC. The EDC, I don't know what, but the EDC's mission in the charter is pathetic. And it is. And it needs a rewrite. I'm not necessarily the one to do it, it shouldn't be too long, but it needs a better mission than what it has.
The EDC, the EDC itself is drafting something for that, so.
For the
Get that
charter
in front of
revision?
you.
But we'll see it, right? Yeah. And then the last thing is the personnel board. And there are great volunteers on the personnel board, but I'm not sure we don't need to rethink the model. The world has changed. I mean, people apply for jobs electronically now. It's not the same slow process it was, 15 or 20 years ago, where you sent in a resume and an envelope, and things sort of, we've just in the last time hiring, we lost applicants who dropped out simply because the time frame from when they sent their resumes in, and of course, because the personnel board rules, nobody can even acknowledge that their resumes are there unless they follow up, because you can't open the envelopes, right? And the resumes came in February, and I don't think the envelopes got open until the end of March. And then interviews didn't get scheduled until the end of April, just because you had quorum issues, and I think we need a personnel function, to make sure that hiring is on the up and up, and people aren't hiring their cousins and things like that. But I don't know that the system that we have right now is efficient. I think we potentially lose candidates. I also think that the jobs, even here in Tiverton, especially for the department heads, have become more and more technical, and the technical requirements to do those jobs, get higher all the time. And it's very hard, I think, to know when you're talking to somebody who can walk the walk and not just talk the talk. If you don't have people in that room doing interviewing who are, experienced in the topic. So I don't know exactly what the right solution is, but I think that we've outgrown the description of the personnel board as it exists today in the charter.
But I'm just looking at the first paragraph, and, to say what John has said. If you look at the very first paragraph, that's all you need. And then, because that's all it's saying, it's like a certain number of terms. And what you're suggesting, it sounds like to me, is that you want something more streamlined, which means, okay, get a time limit on it. And you want something that brings in different kinds, like electronic thing, and stuff like that, which should not be in the charter, which is what your point was, which I think is a
We need
good point,
ordinance.
and I agree. Maybe an ordinance, or maybe a policy, I don't know,
Something.
something,
So maybe
but
we
not the
could,
charter. So we could just cross off some of this stuff and keep that, that short little paragraph.
and then work with the personnel board and the council to try and come up with a more efficient, modern process.
As a example of flexibility, but it's ad hoc, it's not. In the case of recruiting the new police chief, normally, as you're aware, the process would be they would do an interview, and then that gets kicked over to administrator, and then that comes to you. What the chair is going to allow him to do is that he's getting the resumes as normal, but those will be given over to the selection committee that I created, and then they will be the ones who will winnow it down. Ultimately, the personnel board will review those to make sure that they have their cut at it. They're not the ones who will see it first, which has been, I think, a problem. Like you've heard of the problem that they will cast people aside. Then maybe should have had a look.
Well,
So,
maybe
but
that's
that-
what Christine's suggesting, just
Yeah.
get rid of all the other part.
And just like from what you're saying, it's a policy, we just did a little policy for that, and it was like, and it sounds like you're in agreement with that.
Yes.
So is that, just a policy, so that we don't, because it is true that a lot of these other departments, they have one little paragraph, like that. So One thing would be good if there's some way to get a time frame in there to, because I think there was problems with quorums,
It
people
was, everybody was in Florida.
Everybody was in Florida.
That again is a policy. They could have had a quorum, but they were waiting for certain people.
That's
You
not,
can't do
that's,
that. When you
as
have a
long,
quorum,
maybe we
you
should put that as long as they have a quorum, they need to,
And
Go
but a
on.
time frame, a reasonable time frame also. I don't know what a reasonable time frame is, but it seems to be.
we could put it like somewhere in here, the personnel board shall accept and review applications for all job vacancies in a week. And make a little bit like a reasonable time period, as long as they have a quorum they need.
Yeah.
So we'll work on that too. John?
I have two. Anybody else?
Oh, are you done,
Yeah.
Trish?
I'm done, but and I know we can't discuss this, but just a question. I didn't know that there was a search committee for the police chief.
I don't think I call it a search committee, it's a review committee, advisory committee to
Yeah,
use.
he went over that with us.
Did they agree to that?
Yeah,
Did I miss that?
yeah,
Well,
and then,
But I guess I knew that you were going to do that, but there are people who have been named to it.
Yes,
Oh, I didn't. Can we?
yes, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you now, it's not a secret.
well, it's
Right.
not on the
It's
agenda,
not on the
but
agenda, but
maybe
could
we
you
should put
just-
it on the agenda.
I mean, I
just
knew
so
you
we-
were doing it. I
You
just
just
didn't
could
know
do an
that.
update.
I just didn't know.
They have not met.
Okay, I just didn't know who you asked to be on it, and I would like to know that. Thank you. Okay, John, I'm done.
All right. So my two deal directly with saving money. Number one, because it costs us a ton of money every year, we run a special election. Strike the entire FTR section, copy and paste from the town of Portsmouth's charter. I mean, we should have some sort of a financial town referendum function to prevent the council or the budget committee from going off the rails and doing something crazy. But it shouldn't be something that costs the town tens of thousands of dollars to put on an election every single year. And then the second was the Charter Review Commission section. Strike out the portions that make them elected and make them appointed by the town council, because again, it costs us like $26,000 to run a special election to fill those seats.
Okay, so let's talk about the FTR and get a consensus.
Can you just explain, can you give a very brief thing? what it
Yeah.
is with that?
So super high level, what Portsmouth does is the council will put together the budget. There is a period of time where the budget is able to be reviewed. If there is a challenge to the budget, then a 10% of the electorate must sign a petition. That must be accompanied by a full detailed line item budget, which has to be vetted before it even goes to the electorate to vote on. So to make sure you meet your contractual obligations, because obviously you can't have a budget that comes in and you have signed contracts, with.
We have a
Right, so it needs to be vetted, and really it makes the process the process isn't so open and free to put together elector budgets, but it's there as a check and balance against the town government. I mean, I look at the way that we are we have tried to structure our government through the charter, and we have a representative government which, through the process of the FTR, has systematically undermined the electors' ability to elect their representatives, i.e. us, to represent them in the town. So, I just think that we need to bring it back in, the charter needs to be back in line and not sort of straddle this, we have a representative government, but at the same time, we're a pure democracy. And when you have a pure democracy, chaos ensues. And that seems to be what we've experienced over the last several budget cycles. Not to say that the financial town meeting was good by any shape or form. I think that this method is a little bit better, but there is a reason why Tiverton is the only municipality in the state of Rhode Island that is doing the FTR the way that we do the FTR. And it's not because we're innovators, because if we were, other municipalities would have copied us. We're the outlier.
But that eliminates the
There's
budget.
more and more doing that, because the state has told us too, when they bring this in, that there's more financial town referendums going. But whether or not the FTR works or not, it's not the thing, but that one in Portsmouth, you know what it cost them to do that 10th meeting? We don't have a building, a facility to do it in either. $80,000. You know what it cost us to put on an FTR? 11.
But what John's proposing also eliminates the
But
budget
that only
committee,
happens when
I think.
they have 10%.
Yeah, well, so it's few and far between. So they
Yeah.
put together something that costs you $80,000, and that may run once every 2 decades. We're spending 11 grand on clock.
But this eliminates the budget committee, doesn't it?
Well, Portsmouth does it, I mean, we could keep the budget committee, you could not keep the budget committee. I personally, I think, and I made a note on what's gonna come up under 3A, but we've got too many towns and too many boards and commissions as it is. I think we need to downsize a lot of that stuff. Because all we do is we sit here and we talk about, how hard it is to find people who want to be engaged and participate in the town. And it seems like we recycle the same people through, the committees, and it's not because, those people are super engaged, it's because people just don't generally participate. And so if we have a hard time filling these positions, why do we have so many of them? And I think that discussion should lend itself into, again, the size and scope of some of these boards and commissions. Why is the planning board as large as it is? Why is the town council? I mean, we're 15,000 residents. We have 7 of us sitting up here. Why are we not 5?
All right, so.
Sorry, that's a lot. I just kind of
Yeah, you did.
stream of consciousness. It's on record. So.
But I have one question, and just so I know, like
Yeah.
before you say Portsmouth, right? We need to be kept in check. Anybody who's spending the taxpayers' money needs to have a check somewhere. You said there is a check, but you didn't tell me who the check is. Who watches over?
That's what I'm saying, there's no budget committee.
So
Right, somebody needs to make sure that the council spends the taxpayers' money properly.
So there actually are 2 checks in Portsmouth's system. One is the ability for the electors to put together a petition and to hold the budget directly accountable. The second is every 2 years, the town council is on the ballot. So if I'm elected, and we're all elected by the people who are electors in the town of Tiverton, if they don't like what we do, they vote us out. If they don't like what we do, they recall us. I mean, we are, and our recall standards are fairly low per our charter. So, I mean, there are mechanisms in place already to prevent the town council from going off the rails. It's just the way that this current FTR has been structured. It has been done so in such a way to manipulate the process so that a minority can gain control over the budgetary process without physically being elected to represent the budget process. And it's unfortunate. I mean, but that's just the way it is. I think that look at the numbers of people that came out and voted in the last election. Right there, members of this council got over 3,000 votes. When was the last time we saw over 3,000 votes for a budget? Has it ever happened?
That's shame on the citizens.
You're right, shame on the citizens, but they're engaged every 4 years when it's a presidential. And they think when they go to the polls and they vote for their representatives to represent their interests, that that's the extent of what their election process should be. And unfortunately, we've created a system whereby we are subverting those who go out and vote for their representatives to represent them, and they're not aware of what's going on.
I would like to see the council have the last say over how much money or what the tax increase should be. Because the budget committee comes in, they do their thing, they cut this, they cut that, they take everything they can possibly, oh, look, we're heroes, now they're gone. They go away. They should do theirs first, come to the council, and the council will say, well, guess what? You can't cut this much out of there because historically it's needed. You can't do that. Now you're going to have us cutting from here, cutting from there. So if the council is going to be responsible for spending the taxpayers' money and raising any amount of tax, we should have the last say, not the budget committee. Let the budget committee do their job, interview everybody, do what they're doing, comes in front of the council and says, all right, we can live with that amount of money that you're giving us. But if we can't, like we do almost every other year, say, no, it's not going to work. You're going to have to pay the extra 11 cents per thousand or whatever it takes to run the town on an even level without taking everything away from everybody.
And if I could just piggyback on that one thing, because you brought up a good point. In our last budget process, we saw the budget committee dictate policy to the town council, which I thought was absolutely abhorrent. And so we need to put a mechanism in place that the town council is able to sit within their box, which is dictate policy, and not have an outside body dictate to us what our policy will be by underhandedly cutting items out of the budget.
Yeah, but see, they're going to argue with you and argue.
I will be happy to take that argument on.
No, actually.
Well, I can
don't
argue
agree
with you a little bit because we, as a school committee and as a town council, can move monies around. So they're not really, if we believe in the policy, we just take money and we put it in that, and we did it a few times this year. So that policy thing I have a problem with, only because if we weren't allowed to, if they said we're getting rid of the planner and we weren't allowed to put it back, but we are, we can put that line item right back. So that's the only, I don't know if the argument for policy, and this is just my opinion, only because we can move line items around if we wish.
I think that the budget committee does serve a good purpose for checks. I don't happen to like a lot of people that got elected, but there was a clean sweep also on the charter commission, so it's like,
Which happened in the special election.
well, that's okay. It's the thing is, it was, it was a sweep, so the people are trying to tell us stuff. And I just think that, I think to try to put, you want to cut down on commissions, if you really think this town council can come up with a budget and do all the other stuff that we do, I think there's no way that could happen. So I would say, yeah, no, the budget, and to me, it's like they should be elected, because it's really important to the town. I just think that maybe I'd like to see different people elected. But I think it is a good check. I don't like the process of it. And I don't like that it has. I don't think it has to be as nasty as it is. I think you could talk to each other, but
But we-
it is.
That's like
We
something we
need
can
them
put.
to do the work.
Huh?
We do need the budget committee to do the work.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't have the final say.
Well, we do the work also.
But we
by the way.
do our part, but then we
We-
send
we
it to
do
them.
our-
They
yes.
send it to, we send it to
Right.
them, they
Yes.
chop it up, and then it comes back for approval.
Well,
and
this
it's done.
particular budget.
That's the only one I've
checked
ever
out.
seen.
But the town council can put in their own effort. They can put in their own effort.
Right.
So,
That didn't work out.
so that's all.
No, what it wasn't.
No, they
it wasn't
can't
everybody
if
on
I'm
the
being-
a majority votes.
But now you have Karen and crew who went on to the other committee. Now, if they don't like what this new budget committee that we just elected, that we appointed in, they don't like it, they know the rules, they know the game, they know how to put the paper in. They can put anything they want.
Well,
And they
I mean,
Some people vote.
I think in part, that's why I feel so strongly that there should never be another remand budget. If you need to specifically say by what line
What line
item will
items.
be affected one way or another, first of all, so that people who are voting understand what they're voting for. I don't know the exact solution, and I know that legally you can't do this, but, I think the signature numbers for the FTR elector petition are too low. I think you need more signatures because it's just not that hard to get that many
We can
signatures.
increase
People
that.
will sign things that, they
10%.
don't, care what they're signing. And the other thing, and I know there's no way legally to do this, but there's a part of me that, wishes you could say, okay, if you want to sign an elector petition, I know you can't do this, you have to come to this presentation and you have to hear what you're signing for. You can't just be coming out of Tom's and sign the paper and, and which is a little bit what happens. I wish there was a way that there was some sort of more thought that went into this in terms of, what these elected petitions can do if they're not well done.
Some people did come up with it, and I think it's worthy of discussion. I don't remember the exact numbers, but some people would say, okay, there should be a certain, you can only have a cap. You can only go up a certain percentage, or you can only
That's
go
mandated by
up.
state law.
Huh?
That's mandated by
No,
state
no,
law.
not that one. I mean, no, but but I know what you're talking about, the 4%?
Yeah.
No, it was,
It can't be less than a certain amount, right, Christie?
yeah, and I
You couldn't
remember.
drop the general, you couldn't drop what the budget committee recommended by a certain
Or
amount.
increase it by a certain.
Right, and I
You couldn't
can't
drop
remember
it.
who that, what
There
that
were a
actually
couple of
was.
people doing it, but they were just trying to put it in a range. I think that we do need I think that it does need to get some rework. But I do think that the budget committee I just think it's really important, just as a check. Just because I think the town council could go loose and just, sell,
Well, when-
spend and spend and spend.
What about the sheer numbers on the budget committee? It's not a small committee.
I'm sorry, what?
So what about the sheer numbers in the budget? Again, that's not a simple committee. I mean,
You don't need a Heimlich maneuver, do you? I have CPR. Let me go.
Sit.
So,
No,
All right,
I,
this is what I'm gonna say right now, because this is
I'm just bringing it up for discussion. I don't have.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah, I'm not making motions or anything. I'm just bringing it up for discussion. I think
So
we should
does
follow.
anyone wanna work on this?
I think by default I would have to, right?
Well, and this may not be able to be done by the time we go to meet with them. We could just say we're working on a proposal for this. This is an ongoing process as far as they're concerned too. And maybe work on it, maybe you can get someone to help.
actually, I think the Charter Review Commission also
They've
has
done a
something.
lot of this work.
Yeah, I
You
know.
go online, they've got all these.
Yeah, but it's not what John is
But
suggesting.
some do involve that, and there's been discussion like to move the public hearing
Right.
while there's still time to change anything.
Yeah.
If you go through this stuff.
Yeah, I did, but
There's a lot on the FTR.
I would just say too that within the FTR and the way that it's structured currently, there are ways to break it. I mean, we've been lucky, we haven't seen it happen yet, but, you know, we've only seen a couple of budgets come through, but what happens next year if all of a sudden there's 79 budgets in dollar increments that hit the ballot? I mean,
Yeah. Well,
that's,
you know,
that's something that this
But it's
50
been-
votes, 50 signature thing.
It's been
could-
discussed.
well, here's one thing, and I thought this for a little while. I mean, recalling an elected official is a serious thing, but so is putting in a petitioner budget.
Yeah.
For a petitioner budget, you need 50 signatures. To recall somebody, you've got to get 25% of the number of the electors in the last election. So maybe you should have, at least to put in a recall budget, a number equal to 25% of the people.
That's apples and oranges. You could go to an
No, no, no.
FPM and have no signatures and stand up.
But we're
and
never
say
going back to
something.
that. We're trying to move forward.
No, but I mean, but there are potentially things in here, so maybe it has to be equal to 25% of the people who voted in the last FTM. That's the number of signatures you need. And then maybe, same thing here, what is it? And then it's a percentage of the, 40% of the number of the electors. So, I mean, the bar for a recall is a pretty high thing. But recall's really serious. But frankly, so is the budget. So maybe the bar needs to be a lot higher, and maybe it just shouldn't be that, well, 500 people came out to vote, and so that's it.
I mean, I would argue that if we did what Portsmouth does, that the recall becomes even more serious in that situation.
Well, I was
Because the chance of a petitioner budget decreases significantly, and there's more pressure put on the elected officials to actually represent their constituency.
Yeah, but again, I would say that doing all the work that the budget committee does, I think we'll have another committee. It would be the town council, instead of electing people to become the budget committee, the town council will have to appoint people to be on the budget committee, because we can't do all that work.
We do the work.
We don't do all this as much as the budget committee does. You may.
I think we do.
I think you do.
We hand them a prep document, basically, and then it's, you know, their job to go and nitpick it down. So, you know,
That's what their job is.
Probably
That's what they're
nitpick
supposed to
Way
do.
too
Well-
much. And when I started this whole deal up, I thought this town was pissing money away all over the place. When you come up here and you find out there is no money to piss away, nothing. And then they take the little tiny bit you got left, it's gone. And now you're cutting tree lighting ceremonies, trunk or treat, the old ladies, they can't come in here and knit, they can't. Well, it's true.
I'm glad it's only on that tape today.
They took all the money. That's what they do.
Nice.
They take everything, and there's absolutely nothing left. People walk around and say, "Oh, they're wasting money." There is no money to waste.
You saved 3 cents on your last tax
Right,
bill.
but we can't have two people talk and say, "Let's say 50,000 paving," because God forbid you talk to the school department. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. We should say, you know what, that's a great thing that you did there, but you know what, you're a little bit short. We can't cut these people anymore. We need this. And that's it. And that's the budget we should have. Not them say, and I know you say we can move line items, but we need to be, this council needs to be one that says, this is the money we need to run the
They
town.
need to be
Bare bones,
budgeted appropriately.
bare minimum.
They do, but
That's bottom line. You gotta be budgeted appropriately instead of cut.
I agree.
And
All right, so who wants to volunteer to be online? I'm not doing it because I'm too tied up with negotiations, but Who wants
Oh, man, I'm
to?
involved in that too, aren't I?
Yeah, but you don't have to be the one. So why don't we have a committee to look at this and maybe come up with one or two proposals for a couple weeks, like, because they will understand if I say we are still discussing.
And I think it shouldn't be a, here is the proposal. I think it should be, here are the options, and here are the current pitfalls in the way that it's structured, and this is how we think you could fix that.
Okay, so who wants to do it?
I guess by speaking up, I have already volunteered myself.
Anybody else, Christine?
I'm working on the casino.
Anybody else?
I'll help, but I can't do a lot because I got 2 full-time jobs, but I can, I still have a phone.
Is that all right? And then I will help you, but I can't, okay.
Tony, I think you just volunteered too, didn't you?
Yeah, you volunteered.
You volunteered.
Peter did.
Yeah, Peter.
All right, because this could go on for hours and hours.
Yeah.
So if we've got a couple of proposals, and then we'll know what we're dealing with. All right, anything else? Anybody else wants to add anything? Okay. Town administrator discussion on use of gaming revenue. Town administrator draft concept for discussion and gaming revenue use.
If I may, I'd like to take the first and walk through this model that the members of this casino subcommittee saw a few years ago. So I don't think necessarily anybody
No,
So-
I just have to pull one from it, but I saw it. Okay.
So it's this model here, this piece of paper.
I'll leave that in there. Can I just make one comment? And I understand where this $260,000 home value thing comes from, because I think that comes out of the budget committee process, but that is a garbage number when it comes to the median value of the homes in this town. It's actually lower. So,
It's lower?
yeah, and I can actually share that in the raw data, but you can get that from the tax assessor. So I think the median assessed value of homes in Tiverton is like something like 220-some thousand. So I don't need the 260 number. It gets bandied about every single budget cycle and every time we look at items. And it's just not an actual number that is in the median home value in this town.
No, I did not know that. Okay, so what actually the treasurer, the assessor, and I sat down and said, hey, can we just come up with some scenarios of what would have happened if we had the casino, and use 3 million, the gaming shares, it's called, we had that this year, in this budget. So we just took the budget that was approved in the FDR and applied different scenarios to it, how to spend the money. So the first page here is just what you saw in the document, what is the budget this year. For the scenario 1, we assumed that, Dave just did a sort of a calculation, nothing that's been agreed to with Twin River or anyone else. We just said, hey, what if we had basically, a $75 million piece of property and it was assessed at standard rates and it basically produces about $1 million. How would that affect the tax rate if you calculate that through the model? And it basically decreases it to 1836. So the next scenario then was, and these models are additive, is keeping that $1 million of property tax revenue coming in, but taking the capital budget, which we define for purposes of this as everything that's in municipal capital, recurring and non-recurring, and paving, which I think by ordinance is defined as capital, and taking it out of the budget. In fact, taking it out, being funded by the taxpayer, in addition to the other tax. That lowered and funding it, of course, by $442,000 from the gaming share. That lowers the tax to $18.14.
I do. It's just a comment on this model, and I completely understand what you're going through. It makes a lot of sense. But the only comment I would have is that, that capital number of 442,000, there's no way that that's actually a realistic number. I think that's far too low. I mean, we look at like, for instance, our paving budget is like 250, meanwhile Portsmouth spending like $2 million. And I think we've got a couple $1 million worth of roads that need to be replaced right now.
No,
So just
no argument on that for me.
want to make sure that's on the record.
Got it. So, then scenario, the next one is 33, is doing all that, keeping the property tax up, lowering the taxes, using $442,000 of the gaming share to pay for capital, expenses, and taking $1 million of the gaming share, assuming 3, and using it to retire debt. Now, this is a little bit of an artificial, which I'll explain, or actually the treasurer explains in detail in her memo attached to this. But just, if $1 million of the debt could go away and the appropriate, the equivalent of the debt service, that lowers the tax rate to $17.64. Next scenario, number 4, is doing all that and taking another $1 million of the gaming share and applying it to our pension obligation, whether it's a police pension or OPEB. And that theoretically would lower the tax rate to 17.29. Finally, what we did was, just as a comparison, because I think there's some misinterpretation of sort of what we learned in some, I've just heard things. There's some interpretation of what Lincoln did with their revenue and how they did it. So we just added this scenario, and this is new to anyone who was on the subcommittee, because we had Dave brought this up from the other day. Just take the $3 million share, take it off the tax rolls, and what it does is it lowers your as you would expect, as we've been doing in the other scenarios, it lowers your taxes to about $16.86. But here's the difference. In the first 4 scenarios, we actually got something. We got $442,000 of capital improvements. We got $1 million of debt reduction. We got $1 million of pension liability, and we still lowered the tax rate. If you, the scenario that you see in 5 is if you just apply it to the take it off the tax levy, all you get is a lower tax rate, which is not a bad thing by itself, but that's all you get. So, and summarized on the last page, each of the scenarios. And the only other thing I would point out on one of these back pages here is an email from the treasurer that, unfortunately, just simply trying to go in and retire debt is hard to do because we have, in many cases, a 10-year, what's called a call option. So we're sort of obligated to the debt that she just went through and refinanced in the last couple of years for the next 10 years. And in her estimate, we would get much more bang for the buck, if you will, by not leasing fire trucks, buying them outright.
Different kind of debt that we do.
Right. All the other debt, OPEB debt, pension debt, get rid of the lease, the long-term leases, and just investing in capital improvements that someday you're going to have to borrow against, such as a school roof. So that's the purpose of her memo.
You done?
You're done. All I was going to say is there's a lot of verbiage in ways of creating a capital improvement fund, use of this gaming revenue. All I was trying to do, and this is what this picture tries to show, is create a framework that we can discuss. The percentages are notional. The $20 million cap is notional, but it's not my intent to suggest that. It's just to create a structure, whether in the charter or by ordinance, that allows a certain percentage of the money to go to certain things. If they don't get used, they eventually flow through and go to the general fund.
That's what I don't like. Now, I went over your whole proposal today, and I got my own little chart right here, which I made you a copy of, just to show you what's going on. Everybody doesn't have one because you probably don't care, but I did this.
We do.
Well, it's just, this is just.
Randy, can you bring it on Wednesday?
Yeah, I will, and I'm going to do it a little better.
Okay.
What I wanted to do with the money is basically restrict all of the $3 million. Automatically, every year, that $1 million we're going to get. It's going to go right to the general fund. I don't want to see anything channeled to the general fund.
Not for the general fund.
But anything that's
Now, the
left
1
over.
million, you're talking about,
The one, that's
that's the property tax.
right, that's the
not-
non-gaming revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's automatically going into the general fund anyway.
So with the 3 million.
We
you
have
wanna
$3 million.
restrict-
Floor, by the way, floor.
Four?
No, the $3 million floor.
Right, well,
More.
right, well, or whatever. But by putting in restricted funds, if we take the gaming revenue, put in restricted funds, 2/3 of it for debt reduction, at the end of every year, whatever we can't use, because I know this is my dream of having money, and this is how I run my business, this is how I pay bills. We can't do it in a lot of the ways because of the way our mortgages are set up on all those other buildings. But if we just take 1/6 of that money, put it in a payoff fund for the money that we owe to the police and the fire, 15% of it out of
The police and fire capital account?
the capital account to pay off the debt. It took 30 years for us to
So,
get it.
so that would be the fire engines that we, okay.
No, that's up on this end up here at the top, the capital
Yeah,
account.
that's what you're on.
So you
Yeah,
have
that's what I'm
500,
putting
right.
in.
So that's every year that you're gonna get 500 grand. So
Okay.
we won't need that money, and it'll be restricted. All the money that's on my plan right here is restricted. It's restricted accounts except for the $1 million. Nothing will go back into the general fund, because if we stop, something happens to this casino, God forbid it burns down, or any foolish thing happens, and it stops giving us revenue, and we put it in the general fund, we're liable for that money until, and the only way to replace that money is
Well, we'll have
to
to make up
we're
with
gonna have to make up
huge
with
tax increase.
and that's huge tax amounts. But if we put it in restricted funds, restricted 1/6 here, 1/6 there, 2/3 of the money going into debt reduction, and whatever we can't use out of the debt reduction, then we just put it back into these other restricted funds, and this will free up $3 million a year out of the general fund that we don't need to use, which will lower the taxes, just like his plan said. And then we're really gaining, because all our debt is going down. We can get down to...
Plus, you're putting it into the pension fund too.
Right, it's going to go in a little bit into everything. But it's restricted, so nobody can get their grubby little hands on it and just do their pet projects with it. This will work, but the only thing I needed to do was talk to the treasurer lady. I don't know her name.
Denise Surratt.
Denise. Just because a lot of these bills can't be paid. You got to wait. That's why I have this right here for future pension, future paying off when she refinances. So in the future, that money's there, the 500 grand every year. So when it's time, then you have $3 million or whatever it takes. And in 5 years, we can erase 30 years worth of bad town management. Now, this is just rough today, sitting at work. I can clean it up a little bit.
You're gonna need to just a little. Yes.
The reason I'm saying this is I think, I'd like to hear more about yours. What I object to is that we have a casino subcommittee, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to get some ideas so that the casino subcommittee can send the options up to the town council. So it's to me, we're doing an end run around the casino.
Well, we kind of
Let
are.
me just finish, okay? Yeah, well, you kind of are. You
But
are.
I think we
Because
should.
we have, I don't think so, because you don't even have all of the options. There's 3 more options that the casino subcommittee was working on. One I brought up the last time. We've got a couple of more ideas floating out of there. And why we would even talk about this when you're not even hearing all of the ideas. We created the committee. It was unanimous. Everybody thought it was a good idea, and you're trying to discuss things without even listening to all of the options.
But at the last casino subcommittee, you told us that we're not smart enough to figure out where the money goes.
Excuse me, I did not.
That's what I got out of it. You said
I'm
we
sorry
should
that-
get another committee to
I'm sorry
handle
that that's what you took from it. That is not what I
But
said.
that's the way I took it, that we couldn't handle the
Well,
money.
then why don't you just bring it up at the subcommittee then?
I did.
I didn't, because I didn't say that.
I did. That's the way I felt when I left there, that I was insulted, that you insulted
I
me
wish
saying
you
I
had-
couldn't.
I wish you had
Maybe you didn't
thought
do it
that.
on purpose, but I felt that I was insulted that I couldn't handle this. And I thought you said you wanted to put another committee together to spend the money, to handle where the money goes. We don't need another committee. We
No.
can do
And
it.
this is exactly where I think this is a premature discussion. We are meeting on Wednesday. You can hear more ideas float around. We can hear a little bit more about yours. I have major problems with this one that is right here. Lots of problems with it. And I wanted to talk about it more on Wednesdays. I'm interested in what you're saying, and I would like to bring it up when we get this done. Get the subcommittee to say, okay, here's 3, 4. We might have 5 options by then to the town council, and then let's hear the discussion. But hearing it bits and pieces
That would be
here and there.
fantastic, but that's not what you said.
All right,
It's really
this is
not.
what I'm going to say because
I felt like you thought we weren't good enough to decide what the committee was for, was to handle where the money goes. And you
I'm
wanted to put
sorry.
another committee.
All right,
well,
the
I
committee
just wanna-
right now is working on the second part of the host agreement. We gotta finish.
We're working on a couple of things.
Well, I know, but I think that that's the most important, that we have to finish that
That's
host
almost
agreement. Right, but I'm starting to get a little bit like it's redundant now, because the town council is gonna be the one to decide. And, so what's gonna happen, Christine, is you're gonna come with 3, and then Mandy's gonna say, no, I like this better.
No, we're going to discuss it at Wednesday's meeting. If you can come up with something, if you can tighten it up, or make it prettier, whatever you want to do, or actually, no,
When
if
is
you put
the
it on one
casino
paper.
committee gonna be able to do this?
Well, we said we've got
Okay,
another
that
meeting at the end
recommendation.
of November.
That's Thanksgiving.
We do have another one.
We do have it. We have
And
it
but-
at the end.
And my birthday.
But we have to get this to the charter review for
Yeah,
our recommendation.
yeah, but we're talking about it in the subcommittee. It's just like there's other ideas in the subcommittee, and it's just like, to me, it's just you're trying to do an end run. That's what I have, that's what I feel. I'm sorry, Randy, that you felt that way. That's not what I tried to say, because I did say that we did do a lot of stuff. But I also think that we need to bring up the options, just like what the committee was supposed to do. Bring up options, not necessarily, what I objected to is the numbers that just people are throwing out there, and it's just like without, well, actually, I don't want to get into it, because I don't want to do an end run around the subcommittee either. I wanted to present the stuff on Wednesday, come up with a plan on Wednesday, so that we can then present it to the town council. Which, if this is one of your ideas, and I submit that you should have had an idea to the subcommittee as well. If you put those in there, we would have been that much further along.
But we weren't ready at that point. And then when you said that maybe I heard you wrong, but I was under the impression you didn't want us handling it. You wanted another committee to come in.
I did mention another committee, but I will talk about that on Wednesday.
But you said at that meeting to handle where the money goes. And I said, I can handle where the money goes. I run a $1 million business. It's easy. And I got
It might be easy for you. I said that I thought we need more expertise, and I do agree with that.
Right.
But I also think that, again, it's just like I'm getting ahead of myself. I think it's premature. We've got a meeting set up for Wednesday. That's when I'd like to talk about it.
Well, I have this
Right.
represented.
No, I would like you to do that.
Jack, did you want to say?
Oh,
I just had a question.
can we?
Are we talking about the discussion of the use of gaming revenue in the context of what we're going to send to the Charter Review Commission, or is this a separate discussion? Because, I know by our current charter, the council ultimately has the ability to restrict these funds, and with the gaming revenue do
Right,
with it what
and
we
the
shall.
charter commission is working on stopping them.
Okay.
If you read their if you listen to things. So my concern
Yeah, I
is.
didn't have my video camera at their meeting, so.
No, it's not on the.
I know, I'm just.
It's on the website. My concern is that we're not going to be prepared to sell our ideas to the community in a timely manner if we don't get this done quickly.
That's why I want to get this done quickly. But not tonight.
May I ask you a question? I think it's great that so many people are thinking about this. I do understand a little bit Chris's point that there's a committee that's been working on this. So, but I also understand that, there's a timeliness issue here. So my question for Chris is, when do you think the committee would be ready to present to the council the amalgamated collection of ideas and whatever, facts that they thought were important? When could we?
We have the next meeting on the 29th.
No, we have a meeting this Wednesday.
I'm sorry, we have a
I'm
meeting this
Jim, by the
Wednesday. We have a meeting on Wednesday, right. So Randy, if you can get that, if you can get it in a one-page thing, we could, if we do that by Wednesday, so if we can get a consensus from the committee, so that by, let's see, the next town council? No, 27? Maybe we could present it to the town council on the 27th?
But if we're gonna do it on the committee, we don't have to go with it. This is just an idea. This is just,
No, but I think.
That's what we need, we need the
Wait a
ideas.
minute, but the town, but our casino committee meeting is the 29th.
Yes.
The town council meets the 27th, so we'll never get it to the 27th because we have a
The
meeting.
casino meeting was the 20th.
No, we got a charter review meeting, we're going
I
to charter
mean,
review.
okay, charter.
The
review.
casino
Yeah.
committee meeting is the 15th
Yeah,
and the 29th.
yeah.
So the nearest town
I'm
council.
free on the
No,
23rd.
The 8th, the casino meeting?
All right, it's the 8th and the
Wednesday
29th.
night.
Yes.
The 8th and
So the earliest the council could see it would be
In
the
December.
first meeting in December.
Yes.
And
On November 27th, we get a
It's
consensus.
the 27th if we get a consensus.
On the 8th.
Well, we'd have to have a consensus by tomorrow night.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
Wednesday
that's-
night.
Wednesday.
I think that's
Wednesday.
unrealistic.
I have a question about this process, because it seems like there's two sort of concurring things that are going on. We need to have something we're gonna send to the Charter Review Commission, because they're doing their thing. But oh, by the way, we also have to have a plan, and I'm assuming that those two we want to match up, because in the event that nothing happens with the Charter Review Commission, we have to have a plan. So, we essentially move forward on this. I mean, how much longer will the Charter Review Commission deliberate before they come forward with their recommendations?
Oh, it's a while. It's May.
Can they make this casino thing like the last thing they talk about, so that we can have time to put an actionable plan
Nancy, when do
together?
they have to get everything to you?
He said December something, there was the cutoff on what they were.
Yeah, but then they're gonna review, and then they
Oh,
have to,
they're in a, existence till July.
July. That's what I'm asking.
I think. we're
Everything
trying-
has to be set for the ballot by
Questions?
like August 6th or 8th.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think John's point is a good one. I don't want to hurry through this and get something to the Charter Review Committee.
Well, I don't either, but what I'm saying is.
I want to, this is a big deal, and I want to make this decision on its own merits, and, we'll, on this one, we'll get to the Charter Review Committee when we get to them on that. I mean,
What I want to do is get the casino committee, just like we would do with the host committee, we've got some different points, and we've got 5 or 6 different plans, because some of these plans are very different, and some of them, they can mesh. You can see that. If we can get that in from the casino subcommittee to the town council, so then it's kind of like, and one of my plans was to put it in another committee, and that's fine. You might not go with that, but there are about 4 other options that the town council can go over. And if we have it, if we can do it, it's like, okay, 1 page, 1 page, 1 page, because some of it is philosophical, and it was just like give all the money to the citizens, and then the other is give all the money to the to buy the new gifts, the toys, and all that stuff. So some of those we can just, we can get to that very quickly. We don't want that extreme. We don't want that extreme, for example. But yes.
So, but I think what Councilor Hilton's point is that, and I think I feel strongly about this the same way, is that if we get into a situation where, we're doing all this back-end work, right? The committee's doing their thing, they're gonna put together those recommendations, we have a timeline, it's not gonna happen tomorrow.
We're not doing a recommendation.
No, I mean, but eventually, there's a timeline for us to determine what we would do, assuming nothing changes in the charter.
Mhm.
And they charge ahead without figuring out what the council's plan would be if nothing happens going forward, then shame on them, because they're doing a disservice to the people who elected them. So I would hope that the Charter Review Commission chair would want to defer this discussion to the very end, so that we can essentially do a lot of the legwork for them.
Well, I would hope that too, but, you can't guarantee that, right?
You're right,
And it's the
but
same
we
thing-
should ask.
Well, no, but it's the same thing, yeah, and that's fine, but it's the same thing that happened here. We're working on, in the casino, we've got 3 different options going, and all of a sudden, the discussion starts in the town council, and you haven't even heard what the other discussions are, the other options. That's all I'm suggesting, so I'm doing the same thing. Can you folks hold off for a couple of weeks? And you're doing the same thing to the charter revision. Can you guys hold off for a few weeks or months? Right?
Months.
But it's the same, but it's the same idea. It's just
Yeah.
like we can either blow this, or we can really have a good plan and have short-term, long-term, and meet a lot of different goals. We can do it, and I think we can do it, but not if we're working at cross purposes.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page.
I'm not so sure of that. but
Whatever.
maybe we're moving that way.
I think we both want the exact same
Oh,
thing.
you and me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't put this also.
Okay.
There's other people.
I was gonna say, did I miss something in that
Yeah,
discussion?
yeah.
Right,
But
so
I
what do we
agree
want to
with
do?
you.
Do we want to table this until another time?
Yes.
That's what we'll do.
Well, I actually, though, just, could we ask for this for that first meeting in December? That the casino committee get us all their potential options for that first meeting in December? Because I do think we need to have some sort of.
It's gotta move, yeah.
Yeah.
To think about it. Well, actually, the other thing that the casino, the other thing the casino subcommittee is supposed to do is report to the town council. And we haven't done that. So we could get that report in, like a brief report. These are the options, and then we could try to get as much as we could, as detailed a report as we can. So at least you can talk about it. At least you can think about it.
I think if we get the options for that first meeting in December, and
Yeah,
if
I'm
possible,
thinking
in a
before
similar
that.
format, so it's
Yeah.
more of an apples to apples comparison.
I'm thinking before.
Maybe you could, we could all use Randy's format over there, no. As long as they're the same, then at least we have a date and we're going someplace with this.
All of our goal here, everybody's goal here, even though we make whatever, is to lower taxes and get rid of debt. But the best way to lower taxes is to get rid of debt, because now you double killing it. It goes down twice as fast as his plan. And not that his plan is wrong. I'm just saying, because you're gonna dump debt.
But you also do recognize that there's a lot of people out there who have different ideas, and part of what I want to do with the casino, with the subcommittee, is get those ideas out there.
Yeah.
Because there's like an elephant in the room. It's like, we haven't mentioned this or this or this, and people have been, there are a bunch of constituents who, that's the way they want to go. So whether we like it or not, we should acknowledge this is one of the ideas. And
I
then-
agree.
Okay.
I'm the best crow eater there is. I eat it all the time. I know how to cook it, and it's really good. So when I did something wrong, and I took you the wrong way, I hope I'll.
No, well, Randy, I'm sorry, I didn't, that's not what, that was not my intent.
That's why I went forward like this. I just wanted a plan in place.
Oh, you're done? Okay.
Madam President, motion to table.
Yeah, we don't have to do that because I'm already referring. Everyone, I passed out the evaluation. This is Paul's 6-month evaluation for his contract. I know I'm asking a lot, but could we get this to Nancy at the next town council meeting? So you got a few days. Those of us who have worked with this, it'll be easier for us because Nancy has to correlate all these numbers. And then my plan is the last meeting in November, we'll go into executive session, and we'll do the 6-month evaluation. Is that all right with everyone?
The 27th?
27th.
And just send it to Ms. Paul so we can do his
Well,
consult down.
well, that's why I figured you get all this together.
Okay.
We do the same process.
Val has given out.
We send it to Paul, Paul has his own self about, so we can discuss both things.
So Wednesday,
But do not put your names on it. It's not done.
So Joe, I'm hoping that we can get everything to Nancy by this Monday, by our town council meeting, which is the 14th. It's not Monday because of the holiday. And, right, it's Tuesday. And then on the 27th, after Nancy collates all the numbers, and give Paul that, our evaluation, so he can look that over, and then Paul will do his own evaluation. Don't put your names on this. She numbers them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we'll go over it. Okay? Is that okay?
So you're going to hear it by the 14th?
Yes.
Bump the 27th, the 28th, 26th.
No. Just pop. You'll be.
We'll look at the CI.
Yeah, hang on, we'll be on.
Madam President,
Yes.
and one other thing, just for mention, Denise mentioned it already tonight, but advertisement for the comp plan again made it in 2 weeks, even though confirmation is yes, it's going to go in these 3 weeks, and the dates are actually listed on it. They only put it in 2 weeks again, another mistake, and so we have to re-advertise for a third time our comp plan. So, do you want to hold off to December? I've got to have 3 weeks before I can advertise.
Tony, this is
Tony, I didn't tell you
agenda.
this. It was, again, we're not going to hit 3 consecutive weeks. There was problems in production, I guess. So, do you want to wait till December, or do you want to wait till January to post these? What do you want?
But based on the holiday schedule, January probably be better for you.
But we'd have to post in December.
Yeah.
I start
January
to post in December to have it in a
All
January
right,
meeting.
can everyone look at their schedules then?
Can I ask you one question? Can we run a concurrent advertisement like the Fall River Herald?
Just for
It's
another $600-700.
That's why we don't do it. But
But
there was,
just this one time.
well, there was a
Yeah.
suggestion that Leona came up with, that
Yes,
every,
you did. That was
Yeah.
a good idea.
Leona doesn't even know I know this suggestion, that
But she
every
did
week she
suggest
calls and
that
reminds us the kind of
I
time.
send it in each week instead of, but I gotta tell you, probate goes in for a 3-week time and all, and we never have a problem. Well, this is the second problem on the same thing, so we could do that. I would rather do that than to have it published in a different paper where people aren't used to going to find out public hearing.
Maybe it's just because,
Mr.
Tom's going away.
Wrote a little article the last
Yeah.
time. We'll ask him to write an article again.
All right, so we'll make a
Just change the
meeting.
dates to the same one.
Okay, I'm gonna put this on the agenda for scheduling for Monday, or Tuesday, I keep saying Monday, but I mean Tuesday.
I'm
And
gonna come up with
everybody,
dates and see if we
Right,
can
everybody
meet it.
look
We
at
don't
your
need it.
January.
Scheduling doesn't need to be an item.
If we do it sooner rather than later, I'll know when I can pop my travel.
Well, you
Okay.
could do it tonight. Scheduling a meeting, you don't have to have on the
no,
agenda.
you don't, but I just wanted to go and look at my work schedule
Me too.
for January. I can't make that decision right now.
I'll try to plan it first.
Plus, I know I'm going on vacation, I have to talk to my daughters.
Plan it for a snowstorm.
Oh, I am.
All right, Madam President, motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?